I was thinking on the way up here that a lot of times people have a hard time changing things about themselves that they want to change. I get this question asked of me with some regularity. I'll talk about something with somebody, and they'll say, but how can I do that? How am I going to be able to live that? How will I be able to practice that? We determined that, I should eat a good diet and exercise regularly. But then I don't like to eat good food. I've trained myself to eat bad food, and I've trained myself to be lazy. So how do you change that? Or you always wind up with the wrong people, replaying some kind of psychodrama from your childhood, and finding people to fill the roles that your parents dysfunctionally filled, and so you end up finding yourself. Realize that somebody sits down with you, or you figure it out on your own. Usually it's somebody sits down with you and points out the parallels between some of your early childhood experiences and your adult life, and how you keep repeating the same pattern, and then you think, oh, how do I change that? And so some things are easier to change. Usually we're most sympathetic to people who have the same issues we do. So if you're an alcoholic, you meet somebody else who struggles with alcohol, you'll say, oh, I can understand that. But if you're an alcoholic and you meet somebody who overeats, or who has an eating disorder, or who's a sex addict, or who's a drug addict, or who has a problem with anger, or has a problem with lying, a lot of times we end up being less sympathetic towards people who have issues which are unlike our own. You guys ever notice that? It's important to plug in that whatever you are struggling with, you meet somebody else who's struggling with something else, something maybe that comes really easy to you. They're probably struggling with that thing just as hard as you struggle with your most difficult thing that you have an impossible time changing about yourself. And so a little bit of generosity with other people goes a long way. That when you're engaging with somebody and they have an issue that you've mastered, or it was never an issue for you, just fill in the blank, and whatever difficulty they're having, compare it to something that you have struggled with, that you still struggle with. You'll find you're a lot more sympathetic. Anyway, I'm not talking about the stuff that comes easy. So whatever it is that comes easy, whether getting on a good diet, or losing weight, or exercising, or studying diligently, or keeping a relationship going with your family members, or forgiving other people, or letting go of anger and resentment, whatever comes easily to you, that's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is those pernicious, those that monkey on your back that's tough to get off, that gargoyle that's got its hooks into you, that thing you've struggled with for a long time, that coping mechanism or crutch or dysfunctionality that's proven itself to be formidable for you. Does that make sense? So a lot of times you'll get there with somebody, hey, look, your spouse is just like your mom, or just like your dad. Can you see this? And you point out, and people are just like, oh my God, no. And they think, how do I change this so I don't repeat this pattern? Of course, you got a spouse, you got another problem, is that you're in. But anyway, if it's like a bad breakup you had, and we're counseling you post-bad breakup, and you think, how am I going to avoid this in the future? I want to address that. on one hand, we have this epic program. It's called the Four Regular Principles. We're vegan, sober, celibate, or monogamous, and we don't gamble. And by doing those four things, you are unbelievably detached in a very pragmatic and practical way from the stuff that most people cannot deal with. Steering clear of the normal addictive behaviors that people engage in as a coping mechanism that have an incredibly deleterious effect on your consciousness. Steering clear of those things is nothing short of a miracle maker in terms of empowering you to make great changes in your life and break patterns, negative patterns of behavior. So in some ways, our answer to every how-to question is just the same. Chant Hare Krishna, follow the Four Regular Principles. Our basics. That's our answer to every how-to question anybody ever asked for all time. Every question you ever ask. How's your japa? How's your chanting? Oh, it's lousy. Yeah, that's probably what you need to work on. And how you doing with the regular principles? Well, I've been struggling with this one. Yeah, that's probably your problem right there. It's like a panacea for everything. Does a doctor just write the same script every time? He's have a stack of scripts and people walk in. I got this problem. Here you go. Chant Hare Krishna, follow the Four Regular Principles. And just keep passing those out to people. Just send them back out in the world. And there's probably a 90% chance if they do that, then they'll be cured. They'll get the empowerment they need. They'll get the dispassion they need, the equilibrium they need, the insight they need, the strength they need to move forward in life powerfully. I'm not going to give that answer. That was the non-answer for today. But it is a legitimate answer. It should be your first answer for yourself and for everybody you ever counsel. Of course, if you're not following those rules, start following them. And then you can tell other people to follow them because you're following them yourself. You'll see how well they work and you'll be able to point to your own success to help other people have the confidence to step out and try it, and then they'll have successes too, and you'll uplift the world. I'm not giving that answer. So again, just to catch us up, sometimes you got stuff that's tough to get over. Negative behavior patterns, deleterious coping mechanisms, addictive behavior, different neuroses that manifest in these consistent ways in your life, a tendency to think in worst case scenarios, to become angry, to be judgmental, to be petty, to look for the wrong kind of people, to tend towards codependence, etc., etc., etc. And this even includes stuff like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and it also, and all the other addictive behaviors people engage in. So we're talking about that stuff. And we're not talking about the stuff that you've conquered, because that stuff's easy because you conquered it. We're talking about the stuff that you have a hard time dealing with. And just remember, whatever the person you're talking to is having a hard time dealing with, for them it's probably just as hard as the stuff you're still struggling with. So don't be super judgmental. And our first response is tell people to chant and follow the Four Regular Principles, not as just as a cheesy answer which is designed to avoid real intimacy and communication, but because some executive function, some regulation, some auto-regulation, some avoidance of traditional addictive behaviors is absolutely critical and necessary for anybody to make really serious advancement in life, intellectually, philosophically, emotionally, what to speak of spiritually. If you are a victim, just like, I don't know how many of you have dealt with drug addicts. Of course, if you've been a drug addict, you dealt with a drug addict yourself. You've also hung out with other people like you, so then you would have dealt with drug addicts. But in a given room, I'll oftentimes meet a lot of people who aren't drug addicts, and then they might not have had an experience. Good parents, relatively functional parents, they grew up not super hard, then maybe they didn't deal with any drug addicts or alcoholics in life, where they had to really, engage with those people on at least a semi-intimate level. How many of you have never been that close to somebody who's addicted to drugs or alcohol? How many of you have been close to people who are addicted to drugs and alcohol? All right, the majority of us got it. Okay. When you're a drug addict, you're always thinking about getting high. It's the subtext of every conversation you have. It's always lurking there in the background. And you're thinking about how to get over on people, to get money. You're thinking about how to hide it. Your entire life becomes this elaborate lie as you try to avoid being detected, or you try to avoid being called out, and you try to get close to the substances that you've chosen as your coping mechanism. It's impossible to actually have some kind of a connection with that person, because they're always, in a full-blown conversation with their drug. Does that make sense? You're talking about business, but they're really just trying to get some money out of you to get drugs. You're talking about something else, but they're just daydreaming about how they're going to get drugs later on. And you're asking them something deep and personal, and they're just trying to talk to you in such a way where you don't catch on what's really going on. So if you don't give up using drugs, how can you deal with anything? And for people who are addicted to sex, and when I say sex, I mean orgasm. People who are addicted to orgasm, it's the same thing. Their life becomes this shallow move from one orgasm to another, and that's always the subtext playing in the background. Meeting is just abysmal. Obviously, I can argue for not eating meat. I can make arguments for why eating meat is bad. But sometimes I just want to say, are you kidding me? Like, give me a break. How is it that animals with C neuron fibers and nociceptors the same as you have, who feel pain the same, why in the world would you want to kill an animal that feels pain the same way you do to eat, when you don't have to? You got to eat something. You got to consume some life. Why kill an animal? How is that any more justifiable than some alien species coming here and farming us? It's specious, but we're not saying that animals should have equal rights. They should just have the right to live. That's it. If you're engaged in such an act of cruelty on a regular basis, and your body's become a graveyard for all these dead animals and their pain, how are you going to have deeper, profound thoughts? It's all just a facade. So when we talk about the regular principles, it's because those are the standard ways people get addicted to this world and engage regularly, unconsciously, in degenerative acts that make self-realization next to impossible. And so if you deal with those things, all of a sudden you can just see so much further. And you have so much more self-respect and dignity and empowerment to improve your life. But we're not talking about that, because most of you are doing that and you still have problems that you're struggling with, and that's what I want to talk about today. This is what I was thinking about on the way up here. Sometimes you encounter great, phenomenal ideas. The ideas themselves deserve to be put on an altar in your heart. They are profound. Such ideas cannot be memorized the same way you might memorize the Pythagorean theorem or a deductive logical syllogism. Or the lyrics to your favorite song. Some ideas are profound enough that you need to sit with them and think about them. And they're almost like time bombs. And they make you undergo a metamorphosis. Metamorphosis. They're cathartic. They change you. They're powerful. They're like time bombs. Go off at a certain point in the future. They're too deep for you to get in one sitting. They're too profound for you to master quickly. But if you learn to discover and recognize and enshrine in your heart amazing ideas, then in due course of time, those ideas will make magic in your life. Did you follow this? Let me give you a few. When you deal with other people, view them the same way you view the tide. When the tide rolls in, do you think the tide loves me and is coming to embrace me? And when the tide rolls out, do you feel abandoned and rejected and hard done by? The tide's just doing its thing. Has nothing whatsoever to do with you. It's just doing its thing. And if you take everything the tide does personally, or the rain, or the sun, if you take this stuff personally, you're a fool with delusions of grandeur. You need to be on medication or something like that. Other people are, practically speaking, no different. They're just doing their thing. And you happen to be in their way, and so they're doing their thing in your presence. Most of it has nothing whatsoever to do with you. It's not that you shouldn't take it so personal. You shouldn't take it so personal because it's really not about you. They're just running through their script. That idea is radical. It runs super counter to the way we normally take everything ultra personally. But that idea is profoundly true. And if you meditate on it, and you spend time with that idea, and you explore it, and you think about it, and you look at yourself, and you realize, yeah, so much what I'm doing is my own programming, and it doesn't have anything to do with the people I'm with. I just keep doing it over and over again. You realize how much you're operating on autopilot. And you'll realize everybody else is too. And over time, as you sit with that great idea, that powerful idea, you'll become more thick-skinned. You'll become more peaceful. You'll take stuff less seriously. You'll get less offended. You'll get less hurt. You'll become a better judge of character. You'll recognize patterns. You'll be able to spot them and stay ahead of them and steer clear of people when they're flaming out. You know, it's like when you get a Claymore mine, it says like face towards enemy. But sometimes, you know, if you don't know, you'll be looking at it. You can imagine if you didn't know how to read the language, you'd be looking at it like, and it goes off in your face. You'll know, okay, point that away from me. You got to get away from that. That's an unexploded ordnance is about to go off. That's a great idea. Here's another one. You truly have free will. You're bigger than your conditioning. You really can make free choices. You can't change the past, but you're not a victim to it. You can learn from everything you went through. No one can take that away from you. There's a lesson to be found in everything. That's your empowerment. Not in trying to change your past, but in learning from it. These are big ideas. And they help you to search for the lesson, for the growth, for the opportunity to view the world different. To stop being miserable, thinking about what happened to you or what you did that you can't change, and start to focus on how you can learn from that, become a better version of yourself, and then it's not going to repeat itself in the future. That although everybody is just operating on the conditioning, and maybe even me too, it doesn't have to be that way. I can put some distance between me and my conditioning. Take pause. That's another one. Take a beat when you get angry. Make no decisions when you're angry. Don't engage with others when you're angry. That's another great one. Do you know you can set your Gmail account to have a 30-second or a 2-minute delay on every email you send? So in case you realize after you've sent the email that you shouldn't have sent it, it gives you a little option. You can just click that and it just never sends. You need that in yourself when you get angry and frustrated. Just a delay. Like they have on broadcast TV, live TV, I think it's a 7-second delay. So if somebody uses the F word, they can delete it out, bleep it out. You need that kind of 7-second delay or 30-second delay in yourself when you get angry. These are big ideas, and if you think about them, let them seep in and let them do their work on you. It's like I'm here, I talk to somebody and they got ideas that are here. And these ideas are way far beyond me. I feel like, how am I ever going to change? Because I'm solidly here. And these new ideas come in, they're way over here. And there's this massive gap between us, and it seems unspannable. If you honor those ideas and meditate on them and think about them, just spend time sitting with them and working through them and letting them color your thoughts and your life and your reflections on your past. And you go through your past and you go through your issues with these new ideas like an ointment or like some kind of medicinal salve. You okay, Diana? Okay. You just got up all slow, and I was like, are you okay? All right. Then this gap starts to shrink. I've got all these great ideas I learned from life, mostly from other people, mostly from my elders. And sometimes they used to seem really esoteric and otherworldly and beyond what I could ever hope to accomplish or do or practice, or a way I could look at the world from my limited vantage point from where I was compared to them. It just seemed like it was too far away. It's just not true. Over the years, those ideas that seemed so otherworldly, I didn't know how I would ever be able to assimilate them, they become my bread and butter. My elders keep giving me new ideas. It's like I'm always stretching out, reaching for the stars, but it hasn't. I used to reach for the stars, but now I'm in the stars and I'm reaching for some other stars. Does that make sense? You can change. You can grow. You can learn. Can't change your past. Don't worry about it too much. Everybody deserves to be forgiven. You too. These kind of ideas, they just, if you sit with them for long enough, you become a better person. That last one, everybody deserves to be forgiven. You too. Be quick to forgive. It's a gift you give yourself. Forgiveness and reconciliation are different. Forgiveness is letting go of the pain and wishing the other person well. Reconciliation is restoring the relationship. Those are two different things. These ideas, and I purposely, as I was thinking about this, I purposely didn't think of any ideas. I wanted to just do it with you guys in real time. These ideas are powerful. They are potent. They are transformative. And in many ways, a progressive life means you come in contact with great ideas, which means you come in contact with great people. And then you encounter these great ideas, and you enshrine them in your heart and become an expert identifier of amazing ideas. And then you put in the time to work with them. It's like learning how to play the drums. You might get 5 minutes of instruction, and then you got to spend 5 hours practicing the 5 minutes of instruction you got before you can come back and get another 5 minutes. It takes another 5 hours to learn. You encounter a great idea, and then your part is you have to sit with it and think about it. And it starts to come up more and more, and it starts to become the way you look at the world. It starts to become your default. It starts to become a natural movement pattern, a natural motor pattern in your consciousness. You start to look at the world different. Just take stuff a whole lot less personally and be way more empowered yourself, way more hopeful, way more responsible. That idea that you have free will, it's a huge weight on your shoulders, because now you can't just run through your programming. You have to pause and you have to choose. And if you choose to just continue with your programming, that's the abdication of your free will. That's a choice. You're choosing that because you have at every moment the ability to stop and go, wait, I'm going to pause. I'm going to choose a different way this time. You can always be looking for the big picture. Always be looking for the lesson. Always be looking to move forward. That free will opens those doors for you. Just meditating on that idea that I truly have free will. I can choose a different life. It's an entire lifetime in an idea. So what you want to do is you want to collect these gorgeous ideas, these beautiful and profound ideas. You want to become really good at recognizing them and then enshrining them in your heart. And then you just press play and you sit with them, talk about them, think about them, journal about them. And it starts to just water wearing away a stone. And pretty soon miracles are happening in your life. So, number one, sometimes life gets hard on me and I feel like I'm just running over the same pattern again and again and reliving the same psychodrama day to day, and it seems like I'm a victim of my habits and my early experiences, and I can't break free. First piece of advice I need is to follow the 4 regular principles. Chant 16 rounds. Or just chant some japa. Let's start with that. Some spiritual practice. Some connection to divinity. And some personal austerity. So you're not just an animal, just truly running on instinct. We don't have a problem if animals rape one another. You might kick your dog if it tries to rape another dog, but no one calls the police and files a report. And, I mean, maybe they do, but nobody holds the dog responsible. The owner is held responsible. The dog's just running on instinct. No one sits down, tries to explain to the dog that's inappropriate and it wasn't honoring the autonomy of the other dog. Nobody does that because it's an animal. When you get too addicted, you become animal-like and you lose your free will. So point number one, I got to have some personal austerity. Give me enough distance from my vices that I can start to think clearly and not be like that drug addict who's always trying to game everybody. Number two, I need to be kind to other people because what they're struggling with is probably just as hard for them as the stuff I'm struggling with, even if it's different stuff. Which gets us to what we're talking about today. Once you've done those two things, there's still some gap between where you are and where you want to be. And great ideas, powerful ideas, which over time become your own deep realizations, is the magic. You find big ideas, you put them in your heart, and you think about them. You tend to them. You water them every day. Like a plant. You water them and think about them and reflect on them. And over time, you have these profound realizations that come to you just naturally. And they don't just come to you in an abstract way where they're just something you think about. These ideas come to you in a way that's practical. It becomes the way you view the world. It becomes something you use in your day-to-day life. And these great ideas all of a sudden are alive and they're part of you. And they're you. And they're yours. And you live in a more profound, more deep, more meaningful world where there's just lessons and truth and forgiveness and peace and hope and joy around you. And I tried to give you some examples of things that, just came to my mind that are meaningful to me. People are just running their program. It's not really about you. And you don't have to run your program. You have free will. And there's a lot of opportunity and responsibility that comes along with that. And everybody deserves to be forgiven, even you. Here's another one. By making amends, you become a better person, such that you'll never make that mistake again. When you make a mistake, and you do something really wrong, by making amends, the act of making amends requires you to feel big emotions like remorse. And those emotions are therapeutic in the proper dosage. And by going through the act of making amends and feeling big emotions like remorse, you become a better person and that mistake won't happen again. Making amends is as much for you as it is for the other person. These ideas and so many others are salvific. They save you. They're therapeutic. They're prophylactic. They purify you. They're corrective. A little bit of time and some great ideas, and you thinking about them is the match made in heaven. A little bit of time for them to cook and grow. You putting that water on the plant or staying in the fire, and the ideas. Those three things are a recipe for miracles. Okay, thank you very much, IGTV. You guys got any feedback for me?